what's up? Welcome back to my channel. This is now my literal 6th time trying to film this video. I think when I first got my camera, I messed with the... and the battery is dying. Oh my god. This is now my 7th time trying to film this video. I think when I first got this camera, I messed with the settings a little bit too much and I couldn't figure out how to get it back to like looking normal. But at this point, I just have to freaking film. Today, I'm gonna be doing another Disney college program video. I don't do them that often anymore because I feel like I've kind of covered all of the information that I can possibly give you guys. But fall applications for 2019 actually just dropped like Tuesday of this week. So they just came out and I thought it would be a perfect time to make this video because you guys have requested this video kind of a lot and I just haven't got to it. But today's video is going to be all about the phone interview portion of the Disney college program application process. This is usually the most intimidating part of the entire application process. For those of you guys that don't know, I've actually had 3 interviews with Disney and I was hired all 3 times. It's actually kind of a secret, but my most recent interview was only a couple months ago. I applied and interviewed for this spring 2019 college program season and I was accepted, but reality hit and I realized probably shouldn't do it. It just didn't fit into my life. But with that being said, I have my interview fresh on my mind and I wrote down all of my interview questions after the interview so that I could make this video and share them with you guys. So I'm gonna give you guys some tips and tricks for your interviews and then also list some of the questions that I was asked during my interview. So like I've mentioned in previous videos, the first stage of the application process after you apply is a web-based interview, and that's just some basic online questions that you answer, and if you make it past that round then you're asked to schedule a phone interview. So usually, at least for me, my phone interviews were always like a month out, so you have a long time to prepare for your interview. So here's where my first couple tips come in. I think it's still super important to get dressed up for your interview so that you feel professional and to like sit in front of a mirror and smile the whole time, which sounds ridiculous, but they can really hear if you're like smiling and if your voice sounds happy. So that's my little quick tip in there. There's like a couple portions of the phone interview, but mostly it's broken up into 2 sections, and the first part is just like basic questions, and then the whole last half is gonna be based on the roles that you selected that you had interest in. So for my last interview, I only put interest in a couple roles because I have already done the program and I only wanted to go down if it was a role that I would be really happy doing down there. So I put interest in, I believe, attraction, front desk, photo pass photographer, and character attendant. So yeah, those are the roles that they asked me about during my interview. So they just start off by asking you some basic questions to confirm the information that you have on your application. So they'll ask you to confirm what college you're going to and what your degree is or what your major is and stuff like that, hometown, all of that jazz. They ask you some Disney college program questions like, why do you want to do the DCP? What does Disney mean to you? Stuff like that. Have you ever been to Walt Disney World before? Or Disneyland if you chose to be interviewed for Disneyland. And that does not matter. When I went down to my first program, I had never been to Disney World before, so they do not care. They just want to know kind of where to go when they're asking you your questions. Then they ask you a couple questions about your family. They'll ask how you feel about being away from your family, because for these applications that just dropped, it's going to be for the fall program, so you're going to be away from your family for every single holiday in the fall. And then they kind of move on to more like work questions, like are you able to maintain the Disney look while you're down there? And I can do a whole video on the Disney look if you want me to, but that's just pretty much how they expect you to look, dress, and appear while you're working for them. With that, they ask you if you have any tattoos, and this is what trips a lot of people up, is they feel like they're not supposed to have tattoos when you work for Disney, and that is 100% not true. Disney is so accommodating to those that have tattoos. They will find you a costume that is able to cover the tattoo, because I have a lot of tattoos. The job that I just got hired for but turned down, I have this really big like forearm tattoo and they do not care because you can just wear long sleeves. If you do have tattoos though, they just ask how big they are and where they are to make sure they're not like on the face or hands or something that might be a little more challenging. And then a few last questions. They ask, how will the college program help you professionally? And can you speak any other languages? And if you can, you have to take a language test in order to get like I speak Spanish or whatever on your name tag. And since the program houses you, or you have the option to be housed when you're down there, they ask you some questions like, have you ever had a roommate? And if you have, they ask you to tell them about a time that you guys had a conflict and then how you guys came up with the solution to that conflict. They ask if you're able to work in the Florida heat because it is very hot and humid down there. And then just some work related questions like, How would you help a guest that doesn't speak English? What are 3 words that your coworkers would describe you as? How do you deal with repetitive days at work? How would you handle an emergency at work? And then discuss a conflict that you've had with one of your previous managers, and how did you come up with the solution to that? So those are all the questions they asked me that weren't role-based. Those are just like basic questions. Pretty standard for most interviews, I think. And then they get into the role related questions. So this is going to be individual to what roles you selected having interest for. Even if you put having low interest in a role, they can still ask you about it and you can still be hired for that, even if you have like 10 high interest roles. So only put interest in roles that you really wouldn't mind getting placed at. I was asked about character attendant, attractions, merchandise, BBB, and PhotoPass. So I'll tell you some of the questions that they asked me for each one of those roles. So first, I'll start with character attendant, which, spoiler alert, I was hired to be a character attendant and I turned it down, but that was my dream role. So that was hard to turn down. But here are the questions that they asked me during my interview when they did hire me to be one. They start out kind of by asking you, what does character integrity mean to you? And this is huge. So if you're not familiar with that and you want to work in the entertainment industry there, research that a lot because it's super important that you know exactly what that means. Why would you like to be a character attendant? How would you answer a guest question of, why can't characters talk? What would you do if a child is being rough with the character? What would you do if a child is afraid of a character? And what would you tell a guest if you had to turn them away because the character was going on break or was shutting down for the day? The dog is right here wanting to be held. So that's pretty much it. It's just scenario questions and they want to make sure that you're able to handle pressure and have kind of a story to go along with your answers for these questions. The next one that they asked me about was merchandise, and I actually have also been hired to work merchandise for my first college program, and these are pretty similar to the questions that they asked me for that first interview. So they'll ask you, are you comfortable with handling cash and money, which is obviously very important for a merchandise role because that's what you're doing half the time. Are you willing to work independently outside at a cart? Because a lot of the merchandise roles are also in the parks, like outside selling things. What would you do if someone wanted an item in your shop but your shop was out of stock? And then they'll ask you like some situational questions like, if your phone is ringing, you are checking a person out and someone in the store needs an item, what would you do first, second, and last? Pretty basic questions. Again, if you've ever worked retail, these should be pretty similar to your interviews there. The third role that they asked me about was attractions. They ask you things like, how do you feel speaking in front of large groups? Can you memorize a long speech or spiel? What do you do if you mess up that spiel? And then what would you say or do if there was a kid that wanted to ride Splash Mountain but he was too short? Stuff like that. Pretty simple for that too. The fourth role they asked me about was BBB, which stands for Bibbidi Boppity Boutique, and they also have Pirates League kind of mixed in with that. And what this position is you're pretty much just doing kids' hair and makeup and turning them into princesses or pirates all day long. I've been asked about this role for all of my phone interviews and have never gotten placed there, but the questions have been the same every single time, and those are, have you had experience doing hair and makeup? And I actually have worked at a makeup counter for a year, but I've also heard of people that have been hired that have never had hair and makeup experience, so I don't think that really matters. How would you handle a parent or child that did not like the makeup or hairstyle that you did on them? What would you do to fix it and to correct the situation? And then how would you react if a little girl was hesitant about getting their makeup done by you? They only hire a handful of people for that every single season, so it's really difficult to get that position, but those are the types of questions that you should expect. And then the last role I'm going to be talking about is PhotoPass, which are the people that are the photographers around the park taking your photos. They ask you first, are you comfortable with operating digital cameras and heavy equipment because you're lugging your stuff around all day? How do you feel about a guest refusing a picture? What do you do? How do you feel about achieving monthly sales goals? I think this is one of the only roles that you have to do that in. And then last, they'll ask, are you comfortable working in several different parks and locations, sometimes all of them in the same week? That's pretty much it. That's all that they've asked me. There are obviously way more roles than that, so if I did not cover the roles that you're putting higher interest in, there are so many great resources online. There's a ton of blogs. My dog is like literally... But there are a ton of blogs and a ton of YouTube channels that go over the different roles and the questions they were asked. So if I didn't cover everything, just do your research on those. You can find them pretty much anywhere. They will end the interview asking if you have any questions for them, and my advice is to have 3 questions ready to go. You can ask about the classes that they offer while you're down there. You can ask about housing or the housing events and all of that stuff. So make sure you have something to ask. But I hope this helped you guys prepare for your phone interviews. Good luck to everybody that's applying this season. If you have any more more questions, leave them down in the comment section below, or feel free to send me a message on Instagram. I try to get back to all of you guys on there. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.